Good morning, Lab Coat agents. I'm Vanessa Noble here with Lab Coats, and I am in Anchorage, Alaska. And we are going to jump right into our investment series. Patrick Capel will be picking up on all of the calculations for the return on your ROI next week. So he'll be back, and we are really excited about that, going over the spreadsheets and everything that he does when we are calculating the the tax benefits when it comes to investments. And in the meantime, last week we had Tim Kelly. You guys might have, Eric Upchurch from Active Duty Passive Income. He's one of my business partners in Active Duty Passive Income, and he went over the team structure, commercial multifamily, all of the different aspects of getting into multifamily. Today I'm going to be having Mike Glaspie out of Five Pillars Real Estate. He is in North Carolina at Fort Bragg, and he is actually going to be moving to Charlotte. And so he does a lot of creative investment strategies with short-term and long-term. He's acquired 41 doors in the last 18 months or so. So it's not through commercial syndication like Eric Upchurch and Tim Kelly. This is actually through what they call the BRRRR strategy, even borrowing private money. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. And in the meantime, one of the niches that I really kind of hone in on personally is the owner-occupied stacking. So how does a residential real estate agent take an investment lens with every single buyer that you help? Whenever I have my buyer's consultations don't start with, do you want a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car garage house? I really take everybody back down to understanding mortgage, understanding financial leverage, and how they can take an investment perspective with every single purchase. Because the reality is, and one of my mantras is your dream home will always be in your dreams if you don't figure out how to leverage your investments to buy your dream home eventually. Few people can actually jump into real estate and buy their dream home. And so one of the things that I do, and it's super lucrative, especially for military, and I am a service member here in Alaska. So service members, and if you help service members, they have a huge advantage when it comes to investing with owner-occupied loan opportunities because they have the VA loan, which is one of the few zero-down programs that we have in real estate today. Navy Federal has a 100% financing loan, which, by the way, what is amazing about Navy Federal, even though their LOs and their underwriting can sometimes be rocky, but if you're a skilled professional as a realtor and you know how to manage them on that side, and actually I have one LO that I really, really trust there, they will allow people to use a 100% financing conventional loan with no PMI. Yes, the way you qualify for Navy Federal, and this is not a Navy Federal commercial because I only use them for this particular product when I'm helping my clients invest. And but if you are a daughter of a service member, if you're a grandchild of a service member, if you're a brother or a sister, if you're a direct relative of a veteran, you qualify for Navy Federal. So that is like a game changer for people that don't have a lot of capital coming up front. And so I personally, one of my niches is I love to teach service members how to create investment strategies with their low capital owner-occupied loans. And so really quick, before I go into that, I do have a couple of questions here that I'm going to glance at. Your email address. Yes, Sabrina, I will send you my email address. Sorry. But so low capital, because a lot of times we'll get these higher level investors that want to syndicate, that they want to raise money, that they want to find the commercial deals, or, we're going to borrow private money or hard money lending, or we're going to do a BRRRR, or we're going to do a flip. And that's just not for everybody. So how do we take people from a low capital opportunity and walk them through the investment process? Some of the people in my market, because we do have multifamily in Alaska, can buy 3 properties within 3 years. And there's a key to this, that you have to start with the end in mind. That is number one. So whenever I talk to a buyer, it's kind of funny because every single buyer. And I talk to buyers in all sorts of different markets. So for those of you that see me have referrals for all sorts of different areas, buyers will come to me from all sorts of different markets and they're like, how do I invest? And then I need to go find an investment-minded realtor. So this is exactly the framework that I teach them. My question to every buyer is, what dream do you want to create with real estate? And they're like, what? So if I know their end goal, if I understand how they want to use real estate as a tool, then I can help them create that path. So when it comes to owner-occupied loans, you just have to really understand mortgage very, very well and all the underwriting and the qualification guidelines. So it starts with the key term that we call justification. So justification is making sure that you can justify your next purchase. So most of the time, underwriters will allow an owner-occupied individual to buy a new home in their same market within right after 12 months if they can justify why they are moving. So why do you have to move? Well, life changes. So a lot of times, because I have multifamily, my clients will start with a fourplex, because fourplex, triplex, and duplex, for those that aren't aware, are all considered residential, owner-occupiable buildings, so that you can qualify them under residential financing, owner-occupied financing. So they'll start with a 2-bedroom, no garage, a fourplex, and the following year they are immediately ripe and ready to buy a duplex the subsequent year. So 12 months, and then from there they can buy a condo, and then from there they can buy a single family home. So virtually in 4 years, I take my clients into 4 pieces of real estate. And so Mike is here. I'm really excited. We had a little time zone glitch, but as soon as he's on audio, and I'll continue with what I'm doing. Yeah, Alaska to East Coast. What's up, Mike?
What's going on?
Awesome. We've got a little over 90 participants on,
Nice.
93 registrants right now. So super excited. And I was talking about owner-occupied stacking, so I'm going to continue with that. And then I'm super excited to bring you in to talk about your Airbnb arbitrage, a lot of the private money and the BRRRR strategy, kind of how you acquired your 41 doors. So right now I'm talking about owner-occupied stacking, and how to leverage just low capital owner-occupied financing for that. So when you begin with the end in mind and you tell your clients, okay, what do you want to create through real estate? How much passive income? Sometimes my clients aren't just young veterans that are looking to acquire wealth. Sometimes my clients are retired teachers that say, like, I barely have a 401k to lean on, and as I get into my older years, like, that's not sustainable for me to live off of, and I can't keep working. I've invested my life either nursing or teaching or whatever the case may be. Sometimes it's a single mom or dad. Sometimes it's a female that maybe she was a stay-at-home mom for a long time and doesn't have a lot to show for it at the end of her life. So in 5 years, I can take her into owning, a couple $1 million of real estate and teach them how to have that leveraged approach to and the financial strategy. Because if they have a 401k, that means they have reserves to qualify for a fourplex. So if you are in a multifamily market, you're in a huge advantage to be able to help those people that are in that tight money position to be able to kind of change their life and really use those owner-occupied low capital opportunities as leverage to change their financial future. So when I go from a fourplex where, for like I mentioned just a little bit ago, if you're new joining, Navy Federal will allow, even if you're not a veteran, but if you have a family member that was a veteran, you can qualify for being a member of Navy Federal Credit Union, and they do have 100% financing, no PMI loans. Right now during COVID, when the mortgage industry broke over the last couple months, they have kind of pulled back on that, but they always have it and it'll come back. But they still, even their 5% conventional has no PMI. So non-military can qualify to use that. just FYI. But when we're looking at a fourplex for veterans specifically, they have their VA loan. They have to be, if their income doesn't qualify for a fourplex, they have to have reserves. If they own previous real estate, they have to have reserves for 6 months to cover any of their subsequent properties. But the way that they'll qualify is using the gross rents of the property. They can qualify to use them. And some people will say, well, you have to have property management experiences, or you can hire a property manager that actually gets put into the underwriting process. So when you sell a lot of these multifamily, there's all sorts of caveats to the underwriting of this, of the process. So people will say, oh, you can't. Oh, you can't. Yes, you can. I have like 6 multifamilies in contract right now, and nobody had property management experience. And so they go into this either 100% financing with their VA loan. FHA loan is going to be, obviously 3.5. You do have loan limits with multifamily on FHA, so you have to watch that. But that only applies typically to 3-door and 4-door duplexes, and single family have a different guidance on that. Or you're going to be looking at a conventional. So your non-military or non-military related, if you don't use Navy Federal, where they have the 100% financing, is going to have a down payment plus reserves. They can use the gross rents typically to also buffer their income to help them qualify for that higher dollar amount. And if your client has an IRA, any sort of retirement plan, they get to apply a certain percentage of their retirement accounts as substantiation for their income as well. So when you get an LO that's your partner that really knows how to put this puzzle piece together, now you can partner into helping change lives with your clients in these low capital owner occupied opportunities. Because once they're in a fourplex, and the way, depending on what market you're in, but my market in Alaska tends to be a pretty even keel of about a 5% cap rate and a 5% cash on cash return. We're pretty, 4 to 5, we're pretty healthy on both sides of our appreciation and our cash flow. So I really look for a good performing fourplex where my clients will live in 1 unit and then rent the 3, and it covers the mortgage. In some markets, it doesn't perform that well. Some markets, you're going to live in a fourplex and maybe have like $500 out of pocket that you're contributing to the mortgage or to expenses or to utilities. But your clients are able to all of a sudden reduce their expenditures by living in a multifamily property, and then set up for their next purchase. So then the following year, they're able to set up for a duplex property. So the following year, my clients will often move into a duplex property because that whole year that they weren't paying a mortgage or they weren't paying a rent, they were able to save. Military service members sometimes can save between $20,000 to $30,000 in their first year. And oh, by the way, if they're active duty, that's also tax-free basic housing allowance. So it's untaxable income that they're able to put in their pocket. So, and for those military families that don't have second incomes because their wives keep leaving their job to follow their service member, that's basically a part-time job and sometimes a full-time job in some circumstances. So $30,000 they're able to pocket a service member of tax-free income. But civilians that won't otherwise pay rent or a mortgage will be able to pocket what they would have applied to a mortgage to be able to save for their subsequent property. So they'll need reserves, 6 months reserves. So you go into being this financial educator as a realtor as you help them prepare for their next qualifying purchase. So their next purchase, they'll all the money that they'll be saving will be for their applying to their next home, whether it's the down payment or whether it's the reserves. And oh, by the way, since all you realtors know that you don't owe a mortgage in the month that you close or the month after, your client also in the first 60 days is able to collect prorated rents for the entire time, and they don't owe a mortgage for the entire time. So I just sold a triplex off market yesterday, and the gross rents of that building are $3,150 a month. And then my client will receive his basic housing allowance in the military. That's about $2,400 a month. So $4,800 plus $6,100 that they will have. over 2 months. So they are up $10,000 in 60 days, the first 2 months of owning their property. So we hoard that money to apply their down payment for their next properties. So they are looking to stack real estate because they're going to be leaving the Alaska area soon. So they want there in 3 years. So they want to acquire 3 multifamily properties. And once you get your clients into a position of cash flow, now they can play with flips, with burrs, because what I always tell my clients, especially service members, don't jump into risky investments. That is not wise for the money that we earn, the money that puts food on the table for our kids. You know, we don't want to play with that money and put that money at risk when we have a responsibility to support, you know, our families. So, but when you create leverage through multifamily opportunity, through low capital investments, and you set up your clients for justification for their first purchase, their second purchase, their third purchase. So when you get to that third purchase, you do have to have reserves for both of the previous assets. So you have to be a good saver. But what I tell people, it's even if you are buying single family, military service members, and because that's my niche, I speak through that lens a lot, but even civilians, when you have a 100%, what I call your doors to mortgage ratio, you're 100% liable for that mortgage on one door. Veterans are often forced into investments whether they mean to or not, because if they purchased a home on a down cycle in that local economy and the military moves them, congratulations, you're a landlord, or you foreclose or short sale, which is incredibly detrimental to their finances. So for those of you listening, never encourage a veteran to short sell or foreclose, because even if they're underwater just a little bit, their appreciation position that they can earn in that property is always going to be more beneficial than the pain of the foreclosure will affect them and put them out of pocket of the opportunity to invest for 7 years. So for those realtors that kind of will short sale a veteran, please come back to me and I'll talk to you about the creative ways we can help them save their opportunity, because you never want to cut off the legs of a veteran when it comes to their investing. Honestly, a veteran, the VA loan is the most beneficial benefit that we get as service members, and it's their financial leverage when they learn these investment strategies. So do your veterans a favor, teach them how to invest, teach them, how to save their butts, save their tails when it comes to investing. And for that fourth property, typically when my clients buy their single family home, their triplex or their fourplex or their duplex is paying for their mortgage. So now they continue to live mortgage free, and they can either use that capital to get into more sophisticated investing, more riskier, or more higher risk investments. And the cool thing is, sorry, that's my dog barking. But the cool thing is that this is not just about money. Sometimes my clients come to me because the spouse wants to stay home to raise kids. My clients that just closed on their fourplex yesterday, they actually are planning to start a family, and she's a teacher and she doesn't want to have to work for 3 years while her kids are young, right? So when they're family planning, they're like, you mean if we buy 3 pieces of real estate, I can leverage my time back, and when we start a family, I don't have to work because we'll have passive income to have a comfortable lifestyle for our kids for a little bit. So this is incredibly powerful. And I'll definitely, I have a couple of people asking for my email address. So yes, I'll just kind of give it here. Vanessa at activedutypassiveincome.com. So for those of you who don't know, I am a realtor here in the Anchorage, Alaska area. Gosh, Mike, how loud is my dog? Is it loud? Stand by.
He's a little loud. He's a little loud. So for everybody looking for an email, I'm about to put it in the chat. And then I'll go ahead and pass on.
I don't know how much that's going to help. Okay. Sorry, work from home season. Somebody must have come. I'm not expecting anybody. But anyway, okay, so, it's Vanessa with an A. Spell my name wrong. Vanessa, Vanessa. It's all good. Vanessa at activedutypassiveincome.com. And for those of you who don't know, I am a realtor here in Anchorage, Alaska. Just by nature of living in Anchorage and having that multi-family opportunity, I was able to get really, really skilled in mortgage and in leveraging, because you have to know mortgage. You have to understand the underwriting guidelines and what justification looks like in order for you to create that strategy. So anytime my clients will come and ask me about, I want to buy a house, my conversation always starts with this, because if they don't know their options to build their life financially through real estate, then I'm doing them a disservice. And if I'm not teaching them how to utilize mortgage as leverage, I'm doing them a disservice, because I can sell them a home or I can empower them to build the life that they dream of. And if their dream home will always be in their dreams if they don't create a strategy. And most people, besides working 3 jobs, or 4 jobs, they're not going to know how to add cash flow to their life or how to increase their net worth through passive income opportunities or the appreciation value and all the tax benefits. And Patrick Capel will be back next week to continue to talk about, if you guys saw my last 4 episodes with Patrick Capel, we talked about real estate finance, how to properly calculate your ROI. We talked about where he has a master's, an MBA with an emphasis in finance and a master's in real estate. So a lot of really amazing tools to really understand the tax benefits and really how to calculate real estate, not just on a cash flow perspective, but on that long game, understanding how to transfer, your principal, what you're adding to your net worth into that net worth pool, how to calculate that. So as a real estate professional, we come into this business and we have the opportunity to kill it in sales. But do you know how to assess real estate? Do you know how to assess your economy? Do you know how to calculate value? Do you know how to be that financial educator for your clients? And that's where you set yourself apart from any other real estate agent in your market. And which is why, so through Active Duty Passive Income, Active Duty Passive Income is an education platform for veterans, teaching them how to invest. And so I lead the real estate network, all the realtors that are a part of that. And Mike Glaspie is our partner in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He's actually relocating to Charlotte. So if you guys have any investors going to Fayetteville or to Charlotte, definitely you guys want to send them his way, or even any buyer at all. I love whenever I ask a client, any sort of my referral partners, I say, how do you help your buyers? And they always ask me, what kind of buyer, a regular buyer or an investor? All buyers are investors, and it's up to us to educate them how to invest. So I would love for you to share how you acquired the 41 doors in what, 18 months?
Yeah, it's a little like, I got 44 doors now. 4 more are Airbnb Arbitrage. So to give you a little background on me, I spent 11 years in the military. 8 of those years I was with Special Forces out of here at 3rd Special Forces Group in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Well, I noticed that the military thing was great, a lot of fun, very enjoyable, but there had to be a means to an end. I had to find something else. So I found real estate.
And what's crazy, people don't realize is that military are on a fixed income. It's their rank. If you start in a low ranking position, and regardless if you're an officer or if you're an enlisted service member, the military owns your time and you can't make more money. So you are stuck with your rank at the progression that the military will promote you. And
so many people ask, hey, you were active duty, you were deploying, once every year. How did you buy real estate? How did you find the time? You didn't have much money, right? Because we don't get paid much. It's based on a fixed income. But that first deal leads to the second deal, leads to the third, right? And so just like Vanessa was alluding to, my first deal was a house hack. I bought a house with a VA loan, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was renting it out to others.
House hack. What he has on his shirt, that's what he just said. I couldn't really understand you.
House hack. Yeah.
So explain what a house hack, because that's kind of a new like hip word that people use. Basically, it just means rent your rooms. But go ahead.
Yeah, so everything about real estate is as old as time. It's land, right? People buy land, they lease land, they sell land. All these new terms are just fancy ways of us just recreating our version of it. So house hack literally just means that we're renting out portions of the house to bring in income to offset our mortgage. So that could look like a single family home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, where I'm living in one bedroom and I'm just renting out the other rooms. Or it could be a multi-family, a 2 to 4 unit, duplex, triplex, fourplex, where we're renting out the other units and we're living in one. All intents and purposes, it's the same concept. It's house hack. It's reducing your monthly obligation, which for most of us and most of our clients is our highest expense, right? So we want to find a way to kind of get rid of that. And then just like Vanessa mentioned, once you start bringing in the cash flow through those other units, you don't only offset your mortgage, you completely eliminate it, and then you increase your income, because for military, we're on fixed income, right? So we have to find other ways to increase through various income streams. So lo and behold, we started to scale. I began to partner up with others. And it took me roughly about 2 years, and I had 10 properties. Now, for some people, that's fast, and I'm very thankful.
Wait. And you actually closed on 3 properties in one day as a buyer.
Yep.
Okay, no, so like slow down. Back, what happened?
So the first couple deals, and so the way I was structuring deals was I was trying to learn on the fly. For those who don't know what wholesaling
is what most investors do. They learn on the fly.
You have to learn. Matter of fact, most realtors learn on the fly, right?
Yeah, I remember when I asked them, like, who trained you in real estate?
Like, you know what? Well, we figured it out, right? And so we started off with, for everybody out there, wholesaling is just the assignment of a contract. Some people view that as like a negative thing. They have this disdain for wholesalers. But wholesalers, hey, I got this property under contract. Now, all I want to do is I can't close on it. I'm just going to assign the same contract to a new buyer, and I'm going to ask the buyer to pay me a small fee, right? It's a legal practice in most states. I believe there are some states where it's illegal.
You have to have a license in Alaska to wholesale, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, but it is a legal thing that many people are just not aware of. Well, that was my first tool on the tool belt. Once I understood the full concepts of wholesaling, I was like, okay, great. Now what's next, right? The idea of fix and flip, the idea of buy and hold, many people think that you need a lot of money. But there's something out there called owner financing, seller financing, right? There's something else called subject to, deed in lieu of. There's another thing called lease option. And without digging into those all, within this webinar here, just understand that there's multiple options to buy property with very little money out of pocket, which in the grand scheme of things.
So for a typical realtor, like when I hear somebody that wants to go owner finance, I'm like,
yep.
So how, for a realtor that is helping a client that wants to go owner financing, like how do we make it worth our time?
This is what it's all about, guys. So it's all about problem solving. Period. So when I started, I partnered up with Shelby Osborne. I'm sure she'll be on one if she hasn't been on one, and Daniel Kidd. Our first year in real estate with nobody teaching us the ways, we was just flying by the seat of our pants.
We were young kids doing like crazy things.
Just getting out there. Shelby closed 64 deals her first year. Dan closed 57, and I closed 48 independently our first year because we knew how to solve problems. All right. And so when somebody wants to do seller financing, typically, or think about this, how many for sale by owners do you guys cold call to see if, hey, will you list with me? Will you list with me? Will you list with me? How many expireds do you call, right? That's the typical playbook for a real estate agent. How about instead, we have an investor buyer on this side who really wants the property and they pay our commission, right? Because that's a hard conversation for the seller. The seller already knows he doesn't want to pay commission. What if we found a good enough deal where the buyer is willing to pay the commission? Better yet, if your buyer is an investor, how many times does investors buy properties, right? They buy it as many times as they can. They continue to repeat the cycle because that's what investors do. So when I referred back to Dan, who closed 57 deals his first year, he only did that with 15 clients. That's it. No more of those big old databases, the CRM just running and running. No, he had his 15 clients that he serviced above par, above anybody else in our entire market. And he was able to pair them with the right deals, whether they were for sale by owners, whether they were with wholesalers, right? He partnered the buyer with the wholesaler and got a commission, right? So that's why the importance of just understanding real estate investing as a whole. That's the importance of it, because we're not saying that you have to be a premier investor. But understanding as a real estate agent, your business is confined by the left and right limits of what you know about real estate. Everything is a tool for the tool belt. Wholesaling, that's a tool. Flip, that's a tool. Fix and flips, live and flip, house hack. They're all tools to partner and solve problems for your buyers, right?
So the first 3 properties you talked about, one, you had a power of attorney with your brother.
That was Dan. Dan had that one.
Okay.
Dan had that set up. Yeah.
Oh, so he was the one that closed 3 in one day.
Yeah, I closed like a wholesale with a subject to and a seller finance. He did a beautiful thing with his partners and his brothers, where he closed on essentially 3 rentals or 6 units on the same. That was
that's crazy. But so your forgive me, the owner finance. How is that lucrative for a realtor? That wants to go owner finance, because they don't qualify for a conventional loan. So
right.
I'm like, oh, what do I do with this person? What do I do?
Yeah. So as far as the realtor helping the client out, yeah. So when the client comes to you, the client's going to typically be looking for as many deals as they can, right? When they look at a deal and they say, hey, my traditional financing does not fit the mold. So now we have to just create a scenario where it actually makes sense. So if we don't have a loan product, what's next? What's our next most efficient buying power? It's typically cash, right? Now, what does that look like? I'm not saying somebody has to have $75,000 locked away, but what is it that they have to work with comfortably for what we like a down payment? Because that's what it's going to be. Now,
how does somebody set up the financing for an owner, like an owner finance? Like if I know nothing about owner financing, what does it look like? How do I approach a seller and be like, do you want to owner finance this? What does that sound like?
Right. So when you're talking to a seller, primarily I like to look at 1 or 2 things. What is his end objective? They want to get rid of it immediately, right? If they want to get rid of it immediately, that might be a sell, right? Or maybe some sort of subject to or something where it gets over into their name and it gets out of their hands. If some of them say, hey, I just don't want it to be, I just don't want to think about it anymore, right? I don't care where it's at and what it's doing. I don't want to have to worry about it. To me, that's a light bulb. Okay, great. All right, great. What if I took all of the liability off your plate? Right now, seller financing really only works best when there's a ton of equity and a very, very low payoff or no payoff. Because think about it, that mortgage is still there. The new buyer is still responsible for that mortgage, right? Okay. So the conversation is going to go and take place, and just as you start to articulate what seller financing is, and you kind of identify his risk tolerance to it and his appetite for it. Once they say, yep, we agree, let's do seller financing, then we have to negotiate up front all of the terms, right?
Which look like what?
It's going to be, what's the down payment? How much is the down payment, right? Whatever the remaining loan is, right? So it's $100,000, but you put $10,000 of a down payment. That new loan with the owner is $90,000. Great. Now, what's the interest rate? What's the amortization schedule, or is it interest only? What's the balloon payment or the expiration of the loan, right? So it can be amortized for 30 years, which most of us are comfortable with, but it'll have a balloon payment of 2 years. So that means in the next 2 years, you have to get rid of this loan. You have to refinance, you have to sell, you have to do something like that.
Got it.
How are you making the payments? Who's the payments going to? All of that stuff has to be outlined up front. And I like to put that on what I call an LOI, letter of intent. You line item every single thing and make sure both parties sign. Then all you have to do is take it to an attorney and get it filled out. Now, most state real estate forms have an option for seller finance somewhere in the contract. And so if you're not comfortable with your own documents, your state forms, then go to an attorney or go to somebody at your local realtor board and have them walk through how to actually structure a seller finance deal with your own contract. That'll save you money in the long run.
Got it. And so talk to us a little bit about, so your first 10 doors were, just kind of go with how did you stack them?
Yep. So the first one was a house hack, like I mentioned. After a while, I started to see I wanted more buy and holds. The wholesaling wasn't really working for me, but I didn't have any money. So I did the subject to. Believe it or not, the first buy and hold.
I don't even know what that is.
So a subject to, or a deed in lieu of, essentially means that the property gets deeded over to me, the ownership gets transferred over, but the mortgage is going to stay in the seller's name. The reason that worked out, I know most people make that face like, who in their right mind would do that? Well, I'm in a military town. How many veterans do you know use their VA loan to purchase the prettiest house on the block at the top of the market? And then all of a sudden we get this beautiful piece of paper that says you need to move. We call it a PCS, or a permanent change of station in the Army, meaning that, hey, you got to go to your new duty station. Well, unfortunately, we all know that it takes roughly 5 to 7 years to build any kind of equity, loan pay down, right, on a property. And if you purchase it at the top with zero equity in the beginning,
And your VA funding fee on top of that?
And your VA funding fee, there's no way you have any equity. Meaning if you sold the property, you essentially have to write a check to the realtors and to whoever else to make sure that they can cover all those commissions and closing costs. So in that situation, they didn't have the money to write that check. They had no desire to be a landlord, and they wanted to protect their credit. So it was a perfect scenario. I came in, we was able to structure that beautifully with an attorney. We did the subject to, and that was my first real rental. It cash flowed beautifully, and at the end of the day, I sold it and made.
So you didn't live in it; you rented it out.
Rented out.
But they could have also rented it out.
They could have, and they didn't want the burden of it. They didn't want the struggle of it. So it was a win-win for everybody. I protected their credit score. I took all the burden off of them. I was able to make money. Property manager was able to make money. Attorney made money. Everybody wins. The tenant had a place to live, right? So that was the first kind of step into it. After that, I started to buy small, cheaper properties, around that $60,000 threshold, but I rented out for $900, good cash flow properties like that, because that's kind of prominent in our market. And then I did a live-in flip, because, you can use the VA loan multiple times, right? So I had my primary buy and hold. Well, I bought a VA foreclosure, high price point, over $145,000, lived in it, house hacked it, rented out a couple rooms as I fixed up the house. And
a lot of people think you can't buy a foreclosure on a VA loan. Not true. A lot of people think the home has to be like in really, really good condition. No, actually it just can't have any holes in the wall. Can't have, sometimes an appraiser will be sticky on some chip paint if it's really, really, really bad. You have to have running water and electrical.
Yep.
That's about it.
That's about it. Mold and milk, like mold or like rotted wood, is like the biggest things that we get here in North Carolina that the VA will flag if it's on the exterior. But beyond that, yeah. And I was able to go in there, zero money down, fix up the property. And
6 months.
Say it again.
How long did it take you to flip it?
Well, so knowing what I know now, if you live in a house for 2 years out of the past 5 years, you can sell it with no capital gains up to a certain threshold, right? Depending on how much you make. Now, I didn't know that at the time, and I decided I was just going to sell it in about 9 months, right? I was living it. I actually deployed, came back, finished it, and then I sold it. When I sold it, I walked away with a profit check of about $20,000, which to me was outstanding. But the reason I highlight the price point is because I then looked at the closing disclosure and noticed that I paid $12,000 in commissions, right? That was the day I decided to get licensed. I was like, hell, if I'm gonna do it, let me go ahead and do it. Let me go ahead and do it. Let me help other people do it, other veterans do it, other investors do it. And so I highlight that point now to again, articulate for all the agents listening, you are in the best position to invest for yourself. When you buy a property, you still get the commission, even if it's your investment property. Now, when we're talking about return on investment, yeah, money in versus the money that comes out annually, that's how we calculate ROI. Well, hell, what if I get 3% of that back? Now your ROI just skyrocketed, right? So you're in the best position, and that's ultimately why I started off that way. Moving off from there, I just started to acquire properties, doing cold calls, representing myself on purchases. It took me a while to get those 10 doors, and then in about 9 months, once I started to partner up with Shelby and Dan, I was able to acquire 21 properties in 9 months. From there, I'm still creating teams out of state. I just closed on another triplex last week, and then the Airbnb arbitrage just to kind of top it all off, moving forward.
So talk about that, because when we were at our panel in Fort Walton Beach, a lot of people were super interested in the Airbnb arbitrage, which just means a sublease. But it sounds fancy. Yeah. So the sublease, the Airbnb arbitrage, talk to us about what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody knows that the Airbnb is the new sexy thing on the block, right? But an Airbnb arbitrage, just like Vanessa said, is just a sublease. What that means is I'm going to the landlord, getting a flat fee. I agree to pay $800 a month for the next 12 months, right? Good.
Because you're on a long-term lease.
Right. You're on a long-term lease, right? It's not going to be like a 6 month. Yeah, you could do 12 month, but we signed like 2-3 year style leases, right? So we can lock it in at a very low rate. And let's say, hey, okay, we'll pay you $800. No matter. No, that's fine. But in this lease, you agree that we can Airbnb this property. And then whatever profit margins we make after we pay you and after we pay off the utilities and so forth, we get to keep for our pocket, right? Or keep in our pocket. And so what that does for us is it allows us to, we no longer need the 15 to 25% down payment, depending on the loan product. We don't need that, right? We don't have to worry about underwriting for a new loan, which takes a while. We don't have to worry about appraisals, home inspections, all that stuff. When it comes to maintenance of the big items, it's still the landlord responsibility, roof, HVAC, things of that nature, because that's how a typical lease works, right? We were able to hedge a lot of our risk and a lot of our capital expenses up front to truly increase our profit margins and our rate of return and make it a lot faster as well. So that's kind of been our new sexy thing, if you will. But we have now 11 Airbnbs, and we just closed on 2 that we're trying to convert over, and 4 of them are arbitrages.
So basically you don't own them. And so your capital investment into that Airbnb, you guys said was what, $8,000 for furniture?
Yeah, it's $8,000 complete setup. And then to break that down, it's $1,000 to bring in a full like stager. She does it all. We pay her $1,000.
You guys leverage it all.
But yeah, we leverage it all, right? And you can do it for much less, but we leverage it all. We pay $1,000 for her to go in and set everything up. We pay roughly about $5,000, give or take, for furniture, but we finance our furniture. So 0% down, and we finance it interest only for the first 12 months. You can do that, right? So that helps out a lot. But nonetheless, the ticket price is about $5,000. And then the setup fees with our Airbnb property management company is roughly about $1,500, which includes the locks that we're going to need, some of the linens, because we're going to need 3 sets of sheets, 3 sets of towels, so forth and so on. All of that stuff is roughly about $8,000, with $5,000 of that financed. So really, everybody on this call can start an Airbnb arbitrage for about $3,000 to $5,000. Right. And the profit margin.
Once you identify the owner and the market that it
makes
profitable
sense. Right.
Right. Which is a lot of college towns, a lot of, even so, what's interesting is even though through COVID, you guys have been incredibly successful. We have like 3 minutes left. So of our call, but you guys have been incredibly successful. Why Fayetteville, North Carolina? Why is that lucrative right now?
One, it's a super recession resistant. I'm not going to call anything proof, but we have high military travel. We have 3 universities here. We have the Goodyear factory plant right outside of the city. Houston Astros just invested something like $25 million for a 9-year lease to sponsor their minor league team right here, Woodpeckers, the Fayetteville Woodpeckers. So a brand new stadium was built. Most of Fayetteville, downtown Fayetteville, and some of the surrounding areas is an opportunity zone. If you guys are not aware of that, look into it or research it. So what that means is much more institutional investment capital is coming into our market, which has truly stabilized our rent rates. And now we're finally starting to see a little bit of appreciation. This is a cash flow market, not an appreciation market, but it works very well for us.
Linda, my email is vanessa@activedutypassiveincome.com. So I'll try it again. It didn't come up in the chat. Yep. Thanks for sticking with us, even though our startup was a little complicated or a little rough today. Patrick will be back next week, but I'm going to bring Mike back on because I definitely want to talk to you and have you share with the LCA community, particularly about, just how you stacked the 41 doors. The Airbnb arbitrage is sexy once you have cash flow, but it's like you started with a foundation first of other investment avenues. And so you guys can, follow Mike. He actually has a podcast. What is it? Military Cash Flow?
Yep, military cash flow.
Yep, so he talks about a lot of his journey and he shares a lot of his strategy. But so much, I hope you guys enjoyed the owner-occupied stacking and how you can help your everyday clients with low capital investment opportunities become investors, learn their market, and learning your economics is going to make you so much stronger as a realtor, so much more benefit to your clients to be able to give them the guidance they need to make the right financial choices for their future. So awesome, Mike. Thank you so much. Sorry it was a little fast, but we'll come back around. We have this spot every single week, Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific time.
That was my mistake, guys. I'm Eastern.
No, it's okay. It was my mistake too. I'm Alaska. I'm like, I never know what part of the world I'm in. I don't know what the time zone is. All right. Bye. I love